Where do you think you'd be if you never discovered wrestling again in 2012 and it just stayed out of your life completely?
I am the Salamonster, and you're watching Tom Talks Rubbish right here on YouTube. And hit that subscribe button for more videos just like this one.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks Trash, and stand back for another interview. This time, I'm joined by Big Money Drew Nicholas from Love Wrestling. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Tom.
So if we take this back to the beginning, before any of your content creation in wrestling, where do you first discover wrestling as a fan?
So my start as a wrestling fan was back around the late 90s. We had, of course, the Attitude Era booming at that point. And my best friend had a brother and cousin who were very much into wrestling. So whenever I went to their house, wrestling was on TV if it was a Monday night, and Raw is on, and they really only watched WWEF at the time. So there was no WCW at all in my life. But I was only watching what they watched. So growing up, I really gravitated towards the Stone Cold Steve Austin storyline and the corporation and Mankind and a lot of that stuff. So that point, again, I say this a lot, I've taken a lot of stunners in a day because my friend's brother loved giving those. He loved giving them. So they hurt. I'm just going to let you know.
Yeah. One thing I am always curious to know from my guest is if you discovered like the Attitude Era wrestling at the age you are now with no prior wrestling knowledge, do you think you'd be as into it? And then if we flip the question, if you discovered today's wrestling at the age you discovered the Attitude Era wrestling with no prior knowledge, do you think you'd be as into it?
I don't know, honestly, if I would be into wrestling had my friend's brother not gotten me interested in it. And the reason why I say that is because I stopped watching wrestling for a long time, from about 2000 until 2012. So I just had a couple of years of wrestling during the Attitude Era, and then it went by completely. And I don't really remember why. I don't know if it was my doing or if it was just not that much interest from the people who introduced it to me. So they, I think, just stopped watching. So I stopped watching because it was not like, I wasn't going home. I do remember I did have a Mankind doll. I'll never forget the Mankind doll. I don't know.
Was it a wrestling buddy or was it a figure?
It was like a plush doll.
Yeah.
I remember. Yeah, not like an actual action figure, but like a plush doll of Mankind with the little tie and the face mask. And then I think I also had a little sock on the hand. It was great. I wish I still had it, but I know it's long gone. So yeah, but once the 2000 came into play, I did not watch wrestling anymore. So I could say more than likely wrestling wasn't on my mind back then.
Yeah.
So probably, I would say probably wouldn't have gotten into it back then. Now, the funny thing about the second part of that question is that actually happened because in 2012, as not a wrestling fan, I flipped on wrestling and became a wrestling fan.
What was it in 2012?
2012, I come home from work and all of a sudden I'm flipping channels and I'm on the USA Network and John Cena's in the ring. now John Cena I knew because John Cena was kind of a household name at that point.
Yeah.
In movies and whatnot. So I saw him in the ring. It's like, oh, John Cena. Turns out it was the night after WrestleMania 29. Out comes Brock Lesnar. Out comes Brock Lesnar for the first time. I had never seen Brock Lesnar before, so this was all new to me. And they beat each other up, and it gets bloody. And I'm like, oh, wow, this hasn't changed at all.
Oh, yeah.
Little did I know.
You skipped the entire PG era and the stuff like that.
A large part of it, yes.
So what I am really curious to know, you got up Brock Lesnar and John Cena rekindling your fandom, but is there anything from the 12 years that you missed that you've gone back and watched and been like, oh man, I wish I was watching during this period? And then to inverse the question, what is something that you've gone back and watched and gone, thank God I wasn't watching during this period?
So one thing I definitely know I'm happy I never saw live was the I think it was like 2006 or 2007 when DX reformed and and they were going against Shane and Vince at the time. That just seemed like that just seemed not interesting at all from what every video clip that I've seen, and I hear it doesn't get really talked about fondly. So that I'm glad I didn't see, but I go back and watch old Attitude Era stuff. There's like Attitude Era clips on YouTube all the time. Occasionally I'll pull up, on Peacock, because I have Peacock here in the United States, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And very jealous of you. I go back and watch some old Attitude Era stuff sometimes. There's nothing that makes me happier than watching a classic McMahon Helmsley with either The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's like some of the stuff that I remember when I was watching. And in fact, my first wrestling memory, if I could tell you this.
Oh.
My first wrestling memory was the night that Stone Cold had Vince McMahon arrested. I think this was like an early 98 Raw. I don't remember the exact date.
I don't know off the top of my head either.
Yeah, but Vince McMahon gets arrested and then comes back later on the show and has to apologize to Stone Cold in the ring. And that's like one of my first wrestling memories. I always loved that because I loved the dynamic between Stone Cold and Vince McMahon, as mostly everybody did back then.
Is there anything, however, that you might have gone back and watched from, say, 2000 when you stopped watching to 2012 when you started again that you're like, oh, I missed out on this. That's a shame.
Ooh, okay. So there's a couple of things, actually. I loved seeing some of the SmackDown 6 era with Eddie and Ray and all of them. I think that would have been a really fun time. That was around 2004, right? 2002. I believe. 2002, okay. That would have been really fun to watch. As well as, I just missed out on the Summer of Punk and the Pipe Bomb and that whole thing. And I would have loved to have seen that live too.
Where do you think you'd be if you never discovered wrestling again in 2012 and it just stayed out of your life completely?
If I didn't discover wrestling again, probably I would just be... I'm not like a huge Marvel fanatic right now, but I do enjoy watching the Marvel movies. I probably would be more into that. I probably would just be living a regular life, studying to be a social worker. Not really into wrestling at all. But there are people in my life that are wrestling fans. So maybe it would have come into my life eventually.
Are you glad you discovered wrestling again in 2012?
Absolutely. I'm wrestling has given me so much, and it's weird to even think about it sometimes because I look back on a lot of relationships, friendships that I've had for the past 10 years. It's been 10 years this year. And
Jeez. It has.
Yeah.
Oh, God. That
It's
means I've been
crazy.
watching wrestling for 20 years this year.
Wow. Yeah, I'm so thankful for it because without it, I would not be the person that I am right now. I'm 100% sure of that.
You brought up not being the person you are without wrestling. So how does Big Money Drew come about? And like, I don't want to say the character you play, but like your on-screen persona, shall we say?
Yeah, I have a couple of those. So 2012, I get back into wrestling. Obviously, it's just WWE. So I'm watching Raw. I didn't even start watching SmackDown until a little bit later, maybe like 2-3 months later.
Wasn't that when SmackDown was taped anyway?
Yeah. So I start getting into wrestling a little bit more. I remember the first kind of subscription, not like a paid subscription, but like something that I signed up to was Bleacher Report. And that's how I like started to get into more of the wrestling news and stuff like that. From there, I moved to Wrestling Inc. And then I got to Cage Side Seats, which I have a big history with.
Which we'll get to that.
Yeah. And Cage Side Seats was really where I started to get into it for real. That was about 2013. So I was primarily a WWE guy up until about 2016. Now, 2016, there was a storyline. I think it was either the end of 2015 or the beginning of 2016. I'm not 100% sure when it was.
I might be able to correct you, and if I do, I apologize for that.
That's okay. There was a storyline. It was after Seth had turned. He joined the Authority, and Kane was the director of operations.
That was 2014. I hate to be that guy. That was 2014, 2015.
Okay, so it was 2015 then I'm thinking. So it might have been like mid 2015. I know it was after he won the title. So there was a segment where Kane had a performance review on Raw.
Yeah, I remember this.
It was the worst at the time, the worst thing that I saw in wrestling. And I was kind of like starting to get tired of the Authority story.
Were you thinking about taking another break at this point?
I was. And there have been times where I have kind of taken a break a little bit. Not like a long, extensive, like year plus type of a break, but more like a month here, a month there, maybe 2 months in total, breaking it up like that. So after that segment, I was just like totally out of WWE at that point. It was like, oh my God, this was just, Roman Reigns is being shoved down our throats, and the whole Authority thing was going way too long. It went way too long. So I started to just dislike all of this. Coming into 2016, I didn't really stop watching. But coming into 2016, in 2016, two major things happened that I feel changed my wrestling perspective. The first thing that happened was I was on Twitter. At the time, it was at Nicholas Drew 91. That was my Twitter handle because I was born in 1991. So on Twitter at that time, I believe it was like a mid-June, late June. A lot of people were talking about this thing called Best Super Juniors in New Japan. And I didn't know anything about that at all because I was just a WWE guy. So I watched for the first time a match, Ricochet versus Will Ospreay from the 2016 Best of Super Juniors tournament. And I was absolutely captivated because I had never seen wrestling presented like that to me before. Here I am, just a WWE guy, watching a New Japan match, and the way it's presented, the way that the crowd reacts, like how quiet they are, and then they react to something huge and applaud and then stop. It was such a new thing for me, and it started a new, I guess, birth, seeking out things outside of WWE when I got tired of WWE. So the Best of the Super Juniors match with Ricochet and Ospreay, that catapulted me to, of all things, Impact Wrestling. And I'm not really that much into Impact Wrestling, but I am into a very important person from Impact Wrestling in 2016, and that was Big Money Matt Hardy. So from Big Money Matt Hardy, I became obsessed with that. I loved that so much. And then he became the broken Matt Hardy character. And I absolutely loved all of that, to the point that I started referring to myself as Big Money Drew. So Big Money Drew came from Big Money Matt Hardy. And I became known really as that because once 2016 came around, I started listening to more podcasts. I started podcasting myself. I used the name Big Money Drew. So a lot of people now know me as that, thanks to Matt Hardy in 2016.
So when it comes to Big Money Drew, everyone says that the perfect persona is just yourself turned up to 11. So how much is Big Money Drew different from just Drew Nicholas? And then what are some similarities?
So I always thought, when I came up with this at first, I had always thought that Big Money Drew would be my heel character and Drew Nicholas would be my babyface character. I've unsuccessfully portrayed a heel in some aspects with Big Money Drew, but Big Money Drew is me, not really turned up to 11, but it's me who is not anxious, not retreated, or thinking that everybody dislikes him or any, I'm very big into mental health right now.
Yeah.
And I in a sense, I kind of created Big Money Drew to be a completely different persona. But then over time, Big Money Drew became Drew Nicholas. So I'm Big Money Drew Nicholas, as you introduced me as. I kind of just take that on. I merged them. I always said if I was a wrestler or a manager or something, I would love to be a heel. I would love to be a heel.
I think everyone says that, if I'm honest.
I know, right? It's because it just feels so much better to do that. It's so much better, right?
Mm.
So I took on a heel persona with Throwback's channel, Throwback,
Yeah.
Wicked Crazy Pinfalls, where I became sort of a Roman Reigns complex type of a character. I had actually just bought that title right there, the blue
So the
Universal
Universal or the WWE one?
Yeah, the Universal title.
Uh-huh.
I had just bought that title for my 30th birthday,
Oh.
and Throwback had announced that he was doing the Wicked Crazy Pinfalls title tournament. He was getting a title, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna introduce myself to the Wicked Crazy Pinfalls universe as the head of the table of Wicked Crazy Pinfalls.
Mm.
And I had just a really fun time on Throwback's channel, being a real dick. I was being an absolute dick.
Yeah.
I don't have them with me. I couldn't find them, but Maggie loves these a lot. And when I say I love, I mean she hates them. I had head of the table sunglasses that I used to wear.
Is that why she asked me to ask you why you wear sunglasses indoors?
Yes. That's why. Maggie got me to break the head of the table character a number of times when she was on Wicked Crazy Pinfalls because she made me laugh too much. I just couldn't.
What a great lady,
it.
by the way. What a great lady.
Genuinely one of the greatest people in the world, and I'm so happy that I met her. I'm so happy, really. I think that. So I created that character, but then in time, I stopped it. But I eventually became the Wicked Crazy Pinfalls champion. There's the title right there. So I got my 3 titles. The Universal title, the Black and Gold Best Brand.
That is a very nice NXT belt, by the way.
Yes, I love it. I got it on a really, really great sale on WWE Shop. And then I have the Wicked Crazy Pinfalls title right there. So, Big Money Drew, I don't call myself that anymore, but when I was looking for the Big Money Drew handle on Twitter for a long time, and there was an account at Big Money Drew by somebody who hadn't tweeted since like 2011.
Oh, really?
And I was always checking, waiting to see when Twitter would eventually drop that account because it was an inactive account. And finally, I was trying to find it, but I don't remember the exact date. I'm pretty sure it was either late 2018, early 2019 that the at Big Money Drew account became available. So I changed from Nicholas Drew 91 to Big Money Drew officially on Twitter. But I'd never, more back then, I would refer to myself as Big Money Drew. And like the guys at Mat Men and some Cage Side Seats, when I would be like either on their YouTube chat or as a commenter and then part of Cage Side Seats, I was referred to and known as Big Money Drew.
So when it comes to obviously getting into that persona, what was like your prep to make sure you're in the zone to beat Big Money Drew? And then more importantly, because you talk about mental health, what was like your way of coming out of that character once you'd finished?
So these kind of go hand in hand. So coming out of Big Money Drew, I've tried to really just to get into that type of a thing, like especially when I did it on Crazy Pinfalls, Anything that was bothering me, I would just constantly have in my head so that I would be upset. Like there are some things, if you go back in the Wicked Crazy Pinfalls archives and you see me just eviscerating some people, it's really because I am taking it upon myself in my head to go, oh yeah, that pissed me off today. So I'm going to direct my anger at this person because I want to get it out. And I would do some videos on Twitter when I was hyping up matches, and I would be focused on this is what happened to me yesterday. It pissed me off. So I'm going to insert Chris Parrish or Dennis Farrell or Throwback or somebody in Wicked Crazy Pinfalls. I was going to direct my anger at them, and that's what that became. But with being upset at so many things, you know, your mental health obviously gets affected.
Yeah.
So I tried more, I want to say more in like late, you know, the pandemic changed a lot of things, and thankfully it didn't affect me as worse as it has affected a lot of other people. But I just really didn't want to look at things so negatively anymore. And I think that's also a big reason why so what I did was creatively, I had a match in the Wicked Crazy title tournament against somebody named the King of All Worlds. I have no idea to this day who the King of All Worlds is. It's a friend of Throwbacks who wanted to be in the tournament. And I was like, okay. So I made a stipulation for a SummerSlam match for me to advance in the tournament that if I didn't win, I would leave town. So I basically made it a loser leaves town stipulation. Yeah. And I lost. I didn't actually think I was going to lose, but I lost. And I made the loser leaves town stipulation for if I lost, so that this way I could kind of just shed that negativity and get rid of that head of the table, heel big money Drew persona.
You talked about getting rid of and shedding that persona, but will we ever see it return for anything?
Oh, definitely. I'm pretty sure. I've still got the glasses. I still look at them from time to time. They bring
I imagine it's like that scene in I don't know if you've seen the latest Bad Boys film, where
no.
Basically Martin Lawrence retires in that film, but there's a scene after some things have happened, not to spoil it, but you should watch it. It's a very good film, where he's looking at his badge and is like, just when but it's basically him realizing that he needs to go back. And I imagine it's like that with the glasses.
It is, because it was even though it was based in a lot of negativity, I did enjoy doing it. Like I have gone back and watched some of my videos on Twitter and just like legitimately laugh, because I was like, this is so silly and stupid. But there were some leading into the SummerSlam match, I was genuinely enjoying some of the promos I was cutting. But I just knew that at that time it was ready to cut it. And I did kind of bring it back a little bit back earlier this year. And just for a little bit. It was only like like maybe a month, not even. It was like in January. But then I had a big health thing that happened in February. So I didn't continue on with it. But it was a lot of fun. I always enjoy looking back on that stuff.
If you do bring Big Money Drew back, is there anything you'll do differently from like a kayfabe perspective, maybe, and from like a way to protect your mental health perspective? I really struggle with how to phrase that question. I do apologize.
No, that's okay. And it's a struggle a little bit to answer it in a way. I feel like when I was doing it last year, it was coming out of, a lot of negativity with the pandemic and other personal things going on that are not going on anymore. I feel like I'm probably having one of the best years after having one of the worst years, personally. Actually getting married soon.
I know. Congrats, by the way. I meant to say that. Congrats.
Thank you very much. And I lost a job, but then got the job back, and so that was one of the worst parts of the year, I would say, aside from a very unfortunate loss. I had a cat that I had to put to sleep, unfortunately, with cancer. That I still feel that one. That was only in June. That was the end of June that happened. Right when I lost the job too, ironically. So it was not a great summer. But coming out of the summer, setting an official date for my wedding and getting the job back and going to Grand Slam. As you see, I got a floor seat for the first time, Grand Slam. It's been a better second half of 2022 than the first half, that's for sure. So I think that, to answer the question, if I brought Big Money Drew back, I think it would just be it would be more of kind of less negativity and more just picking at people, like poking people. Like, because I naturally enjoy doing that sometimes.
Yeah.
Even not as Big Money Drew, just as Drew Nicholas. It's just a fun thing to do. Twitter can be in a really toxic place sometimes.
100%, brother. 100%.
So poking sometimes, it's a little enjoyable. So I could bring back Big Money Drew without having to resort to a bunch of negative thoughts, and I think probably have more fun with it than I did the first time around.
This might sound like a very backhanded question, but because you relied on the negativity so much, do you think it'd be harder to get in, stay in character, and just come up with skits and things for that character to do if you're not going from a negative perspective?
I don't know. I feel like maybe it would be a little bit more difficult, but I know I'd have a hell of a time doing it though, because especially with Maggie, I love doing it with Maggie, because she mentioned the sunglasses. I would tease the sunglasses when I was on Coexisting. I remember with her and Rob. I had the sunglasses with me at that time, but it wasn't to tease her with them. But something happened at one point, and I was just like, "Oh, look what I have! I have the glasses." I was like teasing, putting them on, and she was screaming at me, "Don't you dare do it!"
Yeah, I love those two so much. It's so weird. They're probably the two, aside from Throwback, Your Good Self, and the Body Slam crew. Out of everyone, they're probably the two that I'm closest with, which is so weird because I've never met them. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I've never met them either, and I totally understand where you're coming from, because there's a lot of people from my wrestling fandom that I really haven't met yet, that I just know from Twitter or podcasting. One of my very good friends right now, he doesn't watch wrestling anymore, but he's a big shot now. He makes a lot of money doing it. Good for him. But his name is Alex, and I used to podcast with Alex. I met Alex on Cage Side Seats before I was working for Cage Side Seats. and we really connected. And I had my own website for a little while, not one that anyone will probably know or remember, called Smark City. And I did not like the name. But another friend of mine, who actually I haven't talked to in a while, I should reach out to him again, Connor. Connor came up with Smark City with me. And I was like, all right, that's fine. And in time, we kind of like were a pseudo type of cage side seats in a way where we would just review stuff. You know, we're not newsbreakers or anything like that, but we started podcasting, and I started podcasting with Alex, and it was really my first time. It was my first time really doing that. I had never done that type of like reviewing a Raw or SmackDown or pay-per-view before. And it was one of the most fun times ever. So I always had that little bit of wanting to be a podcaster, I guess. Or just, I always say the best type of a podcast isn't a podcast. It's just two people, you know, shooting the breeze about whatever it is that they're shooting the breeze about. And it doesn't feel like it's a timed type of discussion where they're hitting a mark to talk about this or hitting that. It's just a free-flowing conversation.
It's like,
you know, and it's between friends, and it's just.
It's like with us. I literally have a few notes, but whatever we cover, we cover. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Or like when I've done Throwbacks podcast, or with Body Slam, I've been doing Body Slam with the soon-to-be. As we're recording this, my AEW stuff that I'm starting with Love Wrestling, and the Fightful watch-alongs that we used to do. It's just really so much fun to just be with friends and engage in what's going on and just shoot the breeze. It's such a fun thing to do, and that's the type of podcast I've always gravitated towards.
You brought up your work currently with Love Wrestling. So how does that come about?
So I have known and been friends with Spencer Love for a little while now. We actually met from Fightful. He did some things on the Twitch channel sometime last year. And we started talking and follow each other on Twitter. So we've become very friendly, and I'm always in, Love Wrestling chats on Twitch. The Between Two Beards show with JPJ and Pluggo, two wonderful people, and JPJ, who I'll be doing the AEW coverage with. They're just wonderful guys. And Pluggo I knew from Throwback show previous to Love Wrestling. And just they approached me. They said, hey, what do you feel? How do you feel about doing this? And I was like, if it were a couple of weeks earlier, I probably would have said no, because at that time I was not feeling great about myself. But just like personally, I was just not like really, I was questioning my role in the space of professional wrestling. And I think that opportunity with Love Wrestling came at just the right time to kind of reignite it for me.
So I asked you this question about reigniting your fandom. If that opportunity didn't reignite your content creating, do you think you would have quietly disappeared and been like, okay, guys, this has been fun. I'm just going to go live a normal life and just be a wrestling fan for the time being?
So I have wanted for a while to like take a real break. And when I say a break, I don't mean just from wrestling. I just mean from like Twitter and everything in general. So I started to implement these little weekends off or just be like, I'd clock out on a Friday and I'd come back in on a Monday because it's sometimes, everyone that I know in wrestling is from Twitter, really.
Yeah.
Twitter, it's really just like Cage Side Seats, Fightful, Twitter. That's that whole thing. So I'm not, I don't talk about wrestling really in outside of the space. It's not something that I regularly engage about with people who don't watch wrestling because I'm like, why am I going to talk about wrestling with my boss at work or people that I know, friends or people in my building, like I'm not going to talk about wrestling with people. So before the opportunity with Love Wrestling came about, I was really just down on my role. Like I said, my role in this wrestling space. And I like being able to kind of just step away for a little bit and recharge. So I realized that, even sometimes when I would take a break on the weekends, I'm still like wanting to know how my friends are doing. And naturally that comes with logging onto Twitter and seeing what's going on. So it's kind of, I've kind of accepted now that it's just a thing where I'm going to be an online person. But once in a while, I don't have to worry about the fear of missing out or being cast aside and not being thought of. Because what really matters the most is you have your friends and you have your people that you can always go to in any time of need. Those are the people that matter the most. Forget about the toxic stuff. Forget about a lot of the tribalism in wrestling going on currently. You've got your core people. Those are the people that uplift you. Those are the people that are just a pleasure to be around. And I want to be around more. Joel Pearl is really the only person. Joe Pearl, like one or two other people, are like the only people I've ever met from online. So, and I love Joel. He's such a great friend. And I've done a show with him on Fightful Overbooked before. Maybe we'll start doing stuff again later on this year. I'm so thankful to have met him. I'm so thankful to been afforded these opportunities that I never thought I would be afforded, whether it was working at Cage Side Seats, covering Raw and SmackDown and the main roster pay-per-views, or being a mod on Fightful's YouTube and Fightful Overbooked, just to want to be on a show and watch-alongs and now I've done some work with Fightful now, helping with the moderation, not just with the chats, but actually collecting super chats and humper chats with Sean, like to actually be able to like talk to such incredible people like Sean Ross Sapp and Jeremy Lambert and Joel and so many people from Fightful and from other places. It's such an honor to me, really. I don't know how it happened. But
I'm exactly the same, man. Like, even the cool people that I get to speak to, like your good self, like Throwback. Me and Throwback talk daily now, and it's weird. It's like, how did I luck into, like, me and you have interacted a few times. It's like, and we've always been cool with each other, isn't it? Like, and as soon as I was like, I would love to have you on. If you said no, it would have been like, okay, that's cool. But as soon as you said yes, I was like, I felt like this is going to be a really deep conversation, and it really has been, man. And I appreciate you being so honest.
I'm an open book, really. Like I don't hold anything back. You could ask me any question, I'll answer it. I have no I don't remember what the phrase, no comment. I'm not a no comment person. I really, whatever you want to know, I will happily give you an answer.
As we look at wrapping this up, because believe it or not, man, we've been going about 50 minutes already, and I do want to be respectful of your time. We're going to do a very quick segment that I call generic questions. Those of you that have seen my interviews before will know this, where I ask my guests their favorite match, favorite pay-per-view, favorite wrestler's theme, favorite tag team, and favorite superstar of all time. Basically questions that Drew might get asked on social media quite regularly. So now he'll have a place to be like, look guys, I've answered this. Please go watch this so I don't have to keep answering it. And in the hopes that it will hopefully help him not have to answer them in the future. So what's your favorite match of all time?
My favorite match. So this, I may have to do like a 1A, 1B
That's fine.
thing because, okay. Whew, okay, good. So there's a lot of people who would pick CM Punk versus John Cena for Money in the Bank 2011. But I go against the grain. And actually, while that match was wonderful, I have gone back and watched it. I love even more the match that they had on a late February, I believe it was 2013.
Pile Driver Gate.
Yes, that was it. That was the match. The match that John Cena put his shot up against The Rock at WrestleMania on the line, and that was probably one of my most favorite matches of all time. I have gone back and watched that match a number of times. It's so special. The storytelling of that match is one of the greatest performances from everybody involved. And I mean everybody. I mean John and CM Punk, the referee, even Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler. Like,
you know what I love about that match? Not to interrupt you, but like I remember there was a shoot interview with Punk because apparently Punk had been gravely ill, like with a bug or something, the day of that match, and literally he was planning stuff out with Cena, and he was feeling that ill that he was like, I don't give a you know what we do. And Cena asked him, and literally all he went was, I want to give you a pile driver, John. Like, I love that story. But I interrupted you. I do apologize, man.
No, okay. No problem. I would like to hear that interview, actually, if you know where it is.
If I can find it, I will DM it to you.
Please, thank you. So that match, even Jerry Lawler and Michael Cole, who was insufferable for quite a while under Vince McMahon, but now is like one of the greatest of all time, honestly. You know, I've gone back and watched some stuff even with Vince McMahon in his ear, and I've come to appreciate him more. But really, when Pat McAfee came around, that just totally reinvigorated Michael Cole for me.
If you want to watch good
and he's
Cole,
even said so himself.
Watch the UK tournament with Nigel McGuinness. That is my favorite Cole. But we've gone completely off track there.
That's okay. I tend to do that myself sometimes. So
yeah.
I totally understand. But my favorite match now, and there's a little bit of bias because I was actually there to watch it, was Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson from last year's Grand Slam.
Mm-hmm.
The first wrestling I ever attended. And I got to see that 30-minute classic between two of some of the greatest wrestlers of all time. That is something that I will cherish forever.
Favorite pay-per-view of all time? So
my favorite pay-per-view, I feel like the classic answer here is probably All Out 2021.
It's one that comes up a lot.
But honestly, while that's, I would say, certainly has one of the greatest moments in wrestling with Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson showing up. But I think I gotta give it to WrestleMania 30 because it was the first pay-per-view I had ever watched. And the story of Daniel Bryan at the time, from start to finish, was just captivating. And The Undertaker's first loss at WrestleMania, getting to see that for the first time, just like, that was just a whirlwind of a pay-per-view. And that I will always cherish that as like my number one.
Favorite wrestler's theme of all time?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because I have bounced back and forth on that one myself. I'm
wondering if I need to start prepping people on these questions. I'm wondering.
No, I don't think you should. I think this should be a genuine surprise for everybody. Man, I mentioned earlier, the McMahon Helmsley regime from way back in the day. My time, Triple H's My Time was a legit banger for me. Like, I love that one so much. But I guess if I had to cheat and do another 1A, 1B, that would be my 1B. That would be my 1B. And my new 1A would be Kenny Omega's Battle Cry in AEW. That's like, I think I have worn out headphones listening to that because I am obsessed with that song. I love that song so much.
Favorite tag team of all time?
My favorite tag team, there's so many, but my favorite one is the New Day. I've been a humongous fan of the New Day.
Do I be pedantic and say they're a trio, not a tag team? But no.
Well, I know. And actually, they're right behind me. I don't know if you saw. I got the three members of the New Day right there. But their tag team work has been just nothing short of every positive adjective that you can say.
The power of positivity.
Their stuff with the Usos, and their stuff with the Revival, and their stuff with everybody. They're so genuine, and I couldn't be more happy that Xavier and Kofi and Big E exist in wrestling, because there's power of positivity, the classic thing. But I think really that is something that has drawn so many people to them, and I could never not be a fan of them, and they'll always be my number one.
And then finally, who is your favorite wrestler or superstar of all time? I've got a feeling based on the shirt, but I will let you say.
Bryan Danielson. You guessed correctly, and I think I kind of wore the shirt in anticipation for that question. Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson is always going to be number one in my eyes. When the Yes movement started in WWE, that was just, it was such a incredible thing to watch him get so organically over just chanting yes. Winning in 2013 and then getting turned on by Randy Orton and Triple H and the Authority angle starting there. It was just, and even before then, the Hell No team up with Kane. I loved that with the Dr. Shelby stuff, and I just recently went back and watched a lot of that stuff because it was just so that was like such a great time, I think, to be introduced to Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, and I had not seen, any of Ring of Honor or any of that type of stuff. So
Really dumb
CM Punk,
question.
Bryan,
Did you know who Kane was back then?
Who was?
Who Kane was back then? And he debuted while you were watching, right? The first time. My brain has gone blank. Sorry, I do apologize.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so in '98, he was already. I think he had just came into '97, right? That was the Hell in a Cell match.
Yeah.
So I had already known Kane, but yeah. So anything that Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson have touched, pretty much I've loved. I loved Team Hell No. I loved the Yes Movement. I loved the heel Planet Champion. I loved that too. And then his work in AEW, the guy said that apples are trees. That's where this shirt originated from.
I remember that.
Thank you, Jeremy Lambert, for this.
Oh wow.
He can do no wrong to my eyes. He will always be number one. If I ever get to shake his hands, I will probably sob because I'll never be able to get over them. That would be just an honor.
Fair enough. So as we look at wrapping this up, Drew, the question I end all my interviews on is with YouTube, with podcasting, with social media in general, we're all sort of going to live forever in some sort of very, very, very weird way. So what is one piece of content from your good self that you want to be remembered for? And then what is one that you're like, if you could forget that, I would appreciate it?
Well, I guess the stuff that probably should be forgotten about is forgotten because it's on a podcast. I probably had some really bad takes. I haven't watched any of that stuff back when I was doing my own podcast with my friend Alex, but I probably had some really bad takes back then. And probably it's better that nobody will ever really find that stuff. I mean, I'm sure it's still on YouTube. The channel still exists, but if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around to see it,
yeah, I agree.
So that would be like the negative part, but some of my favorite stuff has been doing Fightful watch-alongs on Twitch and on Fightful YouTube channel, the Overbook channel, and Hits and Misses. I love doing Hits and Misses with Joel. I would say probably my fight, and I can only say that now because I haven't technically started with Love Wrestling yet. I'm starting with Love Wrestling tomorrow as we're taping this. So I'm sure that will be probably my new answer at the end of the year because I love JPJ and we're great friends and we're going to have a lot of fun doing that too. So, but for now, anything that I've done on Fightful, whether it be coexisting, when I hosted coexisting with Rob Wilkins once on Select, or the coexisting After Dark that I did with them, or the Fightful watch-alongs, that's like some of my favorite stuff is on there.
Fair enough. So as we wrap this up, Drew, where can the good people find you and or your content?
You can find me in a whole bunch of places, really, right now. Starting tomorrow again, I will be doing AEW coverage with JPJ at Love Wrestling. You can follow Love Wrestling at Love Wrestling CA on Twitter and on Twitch. I do podcasts with the Roundtable Pro Wrestling Podcast on bodyslam.net. Usually on Fridays, because I'm not really able to do Monday or Wednesday. But I jump there sometimes when something major happens and I just want to talk about it. So that's, they do their shows Monday after Raw, Wednesday after Dynamite, and Friday after Rampage and SmackDown. So you can find me there also. And you can find me either on Fightful Overbooked with the hits and misses in the archives with Joe Pearl, or hopefully something else is coming down the line soon. We'll talk about that. And watch all that I did. And I'm also a mod on the channel, so don't be a dick or else I will ban you. I don't like banning people, so please don't be a jerk, and I won't do that. And then at Twitter, at Big Money Drew, is where you really can be the most up to date with whatever I'm doing, because I tweet a lot, probably more than I should, honestly. And yeah, so at Big Money Drew, Pro Wrestling Roundtable, at Body Slam, Love Wrestling, Fightful. You'll see it all on Twitter. I'm very good now with promoting my stuff.
It's well worth doing, guys. So if you guys like this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talk Trash. Follow me on Twitter at Tom Talk Trash. Follow, as Drew already said, bodyslam.net on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. For my show with Cassidy Haynes, the WrestleWatch podcast, and follow the WrestleWatch pod on Twitter to help us pick the match that we're going to watch every week. And I will see you in the next one. A goodbye.